And that's why I don't think that it's hyperbole to say is perjured, murderous, bloody, full of blame. Savage, extreme, rude, cruel, not to trust. Enjoyed no sooner, but despised straight. Past reason hunted, and no sooner had past reason hated as a swallowed bait, on purpose laid to make the taker mad. He doesn't tell us who lays the trap. Mad in pursuit and in possession so, had having and in quest to have extreme, a bliss in proof and proved a very woe, before a joy proposed, behind a dream, and there he means nightmare. All this the world well knows, yet none knows well to shun the heaven that leads men to this hell. And I think if people that are in pornographic addiction or seeking help, they would be the best commentators on what he's talking about, because this really creates a hellish state of the soul. And I don't think we've looked enough at the pain of these people that are dealing with these issues. It's very important. Now, I would argue that moral philosophy has as much to say about this as religious philosophy. And I know that some of the religious people have asked, where is the religious perspective? But I think as religious people in this room, we have to deal with the fact that in many ways religion has failed, because this problem is so widespread because of the failure of religion. Now, it's been said the devil has all the best tunes. And I think there's, in fact, William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army, I think made that observation. And so his strategy was to use the tunes of the devil in hymnals. That's a little difficult with pornography. The devil has the best images, so what do we do? Well, part of that is recognizing that there are other types of awakenings. The sexual awakening is only one type of awakening in the human being. And the pleasure awakening, I mean, Kierkegaard says that there's no reason for 9 months of gestation and then several years of nurturing a human being if they're basically going to have the existence of a slug that seeks pleasure and avoids pain. It would be better to produce human beings like larvae that are just hatched out of filth. That if so much energy goes into the production and the nurturing of a human being, there must be something more here to a human being than simply the hedonistic pursuit of pleasure. And this is where he argues that it is the ethical life that is so important. Now, the ethical life is a life in which Kierkegaard said has to be at least one commitment to another human being. You cannot live an ethical life without commitment. One of the most important and really terrifying aspects of pornography is that it is an utter disregard for human beings. There is no thought, and Dr. Scruton mentioned this the other day, about using images where these are objectified images. There's no person behind the image, and yet that person is often an abused woman whose moral agency is questionable given her life history. Some of these women are in sexual slavery. We know that in sexual slavery there have been pornographic materials found in these busts of people that are sex trafficking. And this again is the optimization of profit. It's a lot cheaper to use a sexual slave in the production of pornographic film. So we have to look at immoral capitalism. And I think a lot of us tend to forget that Adam Smith was a moral philosopher as well as being the father of capitalism. So this type of pursuit of wealth without any morality is a major problem in this issue. But in the Politics, Aristotle says, if he have not virtue, man is the most unholy and the most savage of all animals, and the most full of lust and gluttony. It's interesting that he puts lust and gluttony together, because in the Catholic hierarchy, gula is the substrate of luxuria. You need gula. And I think our obesity problem should be looked into, because when you have an abundance of animal spirits, so people have too many calories. And this is why there's a recent study that's going on about caloric deprivation. People are eating 15,000 calories a day in a scientific study to see the longevity effects. They've committed to this, but in Time magazine where I read about this, one of the things that they mentioned was a decreased libido in these people. So the relationship between gluttony and lust is a real relationship, and one of the ways that both the church and Catholicism used in addressing this problem was fasting. literally to deprive oneself of caloric intake. Now, in the Catholic tradition, I think this is very fascinating to me. The deadly sins are sins that kill the life of the soul, leaving the sinner without sanctifying grace. They are not individual actions. These are states of being. So when somebody is inflicted with the deadly sin of lust, they are in a state of lust. When they look at women, they cannot help looking lustfully. Christopher Hitchens is a wonderful example of this when he said in an article in Vanity Fair that it was hard for him to look at the mouth of American women, young American women, without thinking of fellatio. So, I mean, and this is, you can read that on the internet if you're interested in the article, but this is a state of lust. When this is how you are looking at the opposite sex as an end, a means and not an end, a means to your own pleasure and gratification. Now, what's fascinating to me about the Catholic understanding of this is that what is rooted in sinfulness is love. Love is the root of sinfulness, but it is either love perverted, love deficient, or love excessive. The perversion of love is in the cold sins, the 7 deadly sins, that anger is necessary for social justice. Lawyers have to get angry if they're going to do anything about it. And Haley Arcus, I think, can testify to that, and other people that become indignant about things. But when that love for justice becomes perverted into a love for vengeance and revenge, this is where it becomes sinful. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And this is the sinfulness of anger, of ira. You have also the perversion of, to get to the hot sins that are obviously the most interesting to us, you have the perversion of the 3 animal kingdoms. Excessive love, 5 minutes. Okay, man, I'm gonna get to the end. You can read my paper. Let me just finish, chastity, which unfortunately has been conflated with prudery in modern culture. And there is a difference between chastity and prudery. The St. Thomas Aquinas says that chastity is the regulation of the sexual urge. And as Joseph Pieper shows, Aquinas was not a prude. Aquinas actually believed that part of the purpose of sexual intimacy was pleasure. He did not see it simply as procreation, which is often a misunderstanding in the Catholic tradition. That the Catholics recognize that sex is also for pleasure, similar to the Judaic and the Islamic view of sexuality. That pleasure is part of the reason why God has given so much pleasure in that intimacy. But that pleasure in a true loving relationship, unlike a lustful relationship, is far more about giving the other pleasure than taking one's pleasure. And anybody that has been in a truly loving and intimate relationship with the opposite sex knows the truth of that statement. That is far more about giving pleasure than taking pleasure. One of the things I really wanted to point out was, and I'll just, is about concupiscence of the eyes. Joseph Pieper says, "Not for nothing does the Holy Scripture name concupiscence of the eyes among the 3 powers which constitute the world that lieth in the power of evil. It reaches the extremes of its destructive and eradicating power when it builds itself a world according to its own image and likeness, when it surrounds itself with the restlessness of a perpetual moving picture of meaningless shows." What better description of pornographic images? "And with literally deafening noise of impressions and sensations breathlessly rushing past the windows of the senses, behind the flimsy pomp of its facade dwells absolute nothingness." And this is what Kierkegaard talks about despair being at the root of the hedonistic lifestyle. And this pursuit of pleasure is merely an attempt at masking the emptiness that they feel. The void of emptiness is being filled with titillation, stimulation, and prurience.